Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I'm back here with Medieval Kingdom Wars. I think that's paused, right? Should be. So, trade. Trade income. Money derived from trade agreements with other nations. Income is based on the number and size of cities. Nation control. Huh. I don't remember that trade income being there before, but anyway. So, this is a grand strategy type game, and maybe grand strategy is maybe the wrong way to describe it. Let's describe it more as grand strategy light. So, the first game was kind of a first look, where we basically kind of wrestled with the game mechanics and getting kind of a grip on how the game's played. And so that was my first about 3 hour plus long video. The second was another 3 hours plus video of just gameplay. We came to terms with basically how the game is played, and then we were playing. So yeah, and now this video is basically gonna be my review, my thoughts on Medieval Kingdom Wars ultimately as a title. And the very first thing I want to point out here is the chat over here. While the chat is very inconveniently placed and takes up a big swath of your viewpoint, but you can close that. It goes away, but it starts wide open and you don't realize you can close it right off the bat. This doesn't become readily apparent until you accidentally hover over or click on that little chat icon and you see it glow, and you're like, oh shit, I can open and close this. What a cool concept. Then anyway, why I want to point out this chat is because of the community inside of it. This lady T in here, who's a moderator, I can only assume is actually a paid representative of Medieval Kingdom Wars, or at least behaves as if she is a paid representative. She's very professional, very helpful, and she's not the only moderator I've seen in here. And it was very nice, very refreshing change of pace to have somebody in the game at a professional level who understands the game and is willing enough to actually reply to your questions. Very, a thing I can't appreciate enough is this inconvenient chat box that originally looked like an eyesore. It became the best tutorial the game could have ever put in. Even though it did put in a tutorial and I skipped it. The individuals, the mods inside of here do an amazing job. And that is a very big 2 thumbs up for this game. With that being said, I now want to talk about some of the other things about the game and how I feel about it as a whole. I have mixed feelings about how the economy works. So, I started off as a minor lord here in the capital of Brunswick, or my capital of Brunswick. It's what I want to be my capital. It's my first city. It's if you've ever played Crusader Kings, you may feel a special place for your original title. And your original title, at least in Crusader Kings, it can be your primary title. Yes, you'll grow out of your title. If you start as an earl, and you become a duke, well, you are no longer the Earl of Hamburg. You're now the Duke of the duchy that Hamburg is part of, but it's still your primary earldom. So you may collect other earl titles, and it will be listed first. And your realm will show that particular title and or city as being your capital, where your technology is done and things of that nature. So here in Medieval Kingdom Wars, I started with what is basically considered a hamlet, evidently, and there's no getting around it. Brunswick will forever be stuck as a hamlet, no matter how powerful I become. Even if I become the king of Bohemia, my capital, my home, will never be any more than a hamlet. And to me, that just feels wrong. It feels lacking. It feels, I don't know, just it doesn't work for me. I want my place that I start at, because I like to start small. I like to make the little place the biggest place ever. I want my place to become the next Paris, or the next Rome, or the next Constantinople, the greatest city in the known world. And in games like Crusader Kings 2, for instance, I'm going to reply probably to, I'm going to compare to that game a lot, more than likely, because I love it so much. I've got over 3,000 hours in it. That's completely possible to do. So that's one issue I have inside of this game. Which then changes how the economy works. So if you capture hamlets, you can only get so much out of a hamlet money-wise. I haven't actually captured one of these bigger cities. I don't know how much more money they give, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's a fair amount more. In fact, I know it's a fair amount more because I've watched some other streamers, and I've seen how much has been gotten from the larger towns compared to a hamlet. So with that being said, starting out small, doesn't give you the rewarding feeling that it should. I mean, when you start out small in this game, you are really actually handicapping yourself, and you're handicapping yourself quite a bit. But here I am, on my third session in, if you will. I've got 4 hamlets to my name, and looking to expand to a 5th. And I feel strong. Where am I going with this? It wasn't that hard to do that. I'm not putting into words properly here. My first battle when I took Dortmund, and I ran in with my troops, and I kind of got caught off guard in that first battle. My militia kind of got melted when they were pushing the cap point of the town. And I actually had to fall back in that first battle, if you guys were watching. And I had to use my archers in kind of defense. And because of that battle, my archers actually got really powerful because they were killing so many units. And we ended up in kind of a stalemate siege face-off until my militia units recovered their strength. And I realized I couldn't just willy-nilly push my troops in there because I had more numbers. That militia, well, isn't as strong as I thought a melee unit would be versus itself. And that's kind of strange. It seems like it seemed like the militia units I was facing with my militia units tended to be stronger than my militia units. But the archers tended to be, well, kind of on the overpowered side. And I didn't mind that. I did not mind the fact that archers were overpowered. And I didn't mind the fact that the computer, from a combat perspective, was pretty much, well, dumb. It just rushed its units headlong into my hail of arrows and kept doing that and kept doing that and kept doing that. I don't mind that fact at all because, well, to be strangely honest, I don't think combat's the most important part of a grand strategy game. And so the combat in this game, for me, is good enough. I think a lot of individuals might look at this combat system and call it woefully lacking. For me, I call it just fine. I actually liked a lot of the combat. It felt like you did get an advantage from putting your archers on hilltops, that you did get longer range. It felt like, well, it felt odd that you could shoot over the top of a mountain and hit soldiers on the other side of it, but then again, you could put melee troops in the gap and then put a bunch of archers on the other side of that impassable terrain and hail over the top of it. So I liked that. It created simple terrain manufactured tactical combat without overthinking it. It was reminiscent of a game I used to play long ago called Sun Tzu's Ancient Art of War, where you only had 3 unit types. You had archers, you had knights, and you had barbarians. And the barbarians were really good against archers. The archers were really good against knights, and the knights were really good against barbarians. So they made like a rock, paper, scissors type effect when fighting each other. And that was it. There weren't any other unit types into the game. And so the game was very much about utilizing your supply lines and your geography to your best ability, and to capitalize on taking advantage of attacking your enemy when they're weak. Well, a lot like what you would expect Sun Tzu's Ancient Art of War should be. And to me, I get a little bit of feel of that game in this from the simplicity standpoint of the combat. And so I think that's a good thing. I guess where I'm going with this is the economy. And I don't have a huge issue with the economy. In fact, I like a lot of the parts about the economy in the game. It's just that if you start off with a small settlement like I did, and you are purposely handicapping yourself, you're purposely handicapping yourself to an extreme that's not within balance of the game itself. It is within some balance of the game itself, because the AI is, for lack of a better word, not as competent as the player. But if I was in a multiplayer situation, starting as that small tiny lord, and somebody else started as, say, I don't know, Dover or something, where they get a giant city and 2 hamlets, then of course I'm at a big disadvantage, and that shouldn't be as huge of a disadvantage as it is. And what I mean by that is, in Crusader Kings, you can start as a small earl, and somebody else can start as a duke. But the game's economy works a bit differently. you can have a small title and still generate nearly as much income as a duke who has vassals and only one city. So you're still generating about the same amount of money. But in this situation, it's obvious that the other player is going to start off making hordes more money. And where that falls into being an issue is that the economy is the main and primary way
How mayest I make improvements?
of making improvements, as the steward just said. And those improvements be your research. I like this and I don't. So I like the fact that your research is really difficult in this game, and that's good, because you have to actually purchase all of these damn things up here to unlock these. But how hard the research tree is completely dependent on how robust your economy is. And if you watched me play, you saw that I've been completely focused on developing as robust of economy as I possibly can out of the hamlets. I've got them packed with animals that are generating trickles of taxes. And so I've gotten as much economy as I can. And so I've been able to buy as many of these research goods as I can. But if I would have started as Dover, I think I would have been way farther along in the economy slash research department. And that doubles down on itself. It snowballs. So by unlocking economy and some of these different researches, you actually generate even more income faster, thus allowing you to progress faster, thus turning into a snowball. And so if I was to judge this game from a multiplayer player versus player aspect, of course I would likely never start in such a handicap situation if I understood what I understood now. And so I guess you can keep that from happening. But in a game where you can start so differently and so diversely, it feels like this is out of balance in such an environment. So if we were really playing a true multiplayer campaign where all these different lords were other players, these small lords would be nothing more than targets. They would not be able to compete with the larger lords from the very get-go because of how the economy works in this game. So I think that's ultimately where I'm trying to go with this entire point of this section of the conversation. Alright, so now that we've gotten past that, the advisors here, I kind of like them. They harken back to one of my favorite Civilization games, which was Civ 2. And I love the Civ 2 advisors. And this reminds me a little bit of that. But the Civ 2 advisors were better than these guys. These guys don't...
God's nails, what needest thou?
They don't really give me much information. They're just a clever UI button is what they are. This is basically a button for me to get to this UI window. I'd like it to be a little more than this. I'd like him to be more of an advisor. He doesn't really advise. He's just a button.
Thou mayst trust in my discretion.
So that comes into diplomacy. Diplomacy is where this game really shows it's a bit lacking. So while this game has some decent combat features and it plays out okay economy-wise, and it's got some neat ideas for research paths. The diplomacy at this point in time is woefully lacking. And that's always been something that has plagued grand strategy and Forex games is economy usually isn't really good, you know. Civ 2 didn't have the greatest economy, Civ 3, Civ 4, Civ 5, or not economy, diplomacy. But even then, all those titles I just said have far more diplomacy than what you find in this. Even Total War has more diplomacy, which Total War doesn't have much for any diplomacy, and that's just how lacking in diplomacy this is. You can't even sue for peace. Well, you can. Lady T here, kind enough to tell me that if you bribe your enemy, you give them enough gifts of gold, they'll just automatically go to a peaceful state with you, which that's kind of bizarre, but okay. I guess that's one way of getting peace, but, you know, who's going to buy peace from their enemy whose ass you've been kicking all day long? No, I would rather them come to me and ask for peace because they've been getting their ass kicked. Not me have to pay them for the privilege of having peace. And with that being said, the game plays out very strange. It doesn't feel very real. So like in Crusader Kings 2, you have Casus Belli, people will declare war on each other, and sure, you might have more wars than what would actually happen in real life, but it's not war after war after war after war. It's war to an extent. It has some believability to it. In this game, you start off with war with somebody. That's pretty much a given. And for me, I started off as in the Kingdom of Bohemia, and we started off at war with the Holy Roman Empire. Well, not too long into it, Austria declared war on us, and then not too long after that, Burgundy declared war on us. Then not too long after that, somebody down here, who was it, like Spain or something? Yeah, Spain, Aragon declared war on us. Then England declared war on us. Then Portugal declared war on us. And I mean, what the heck? We're not even in the same sphere of influence. There's no reason for these wars to be declared. And it's just like, what? It's very fake. It's very, okay, as the game goes on, people will just declare war at you. As kind of like a fake difficulty. Just a way of piling onto the player pointlessly. And nobody ever declares peace. So from that side point, this game has a lot of issues in the diplomatic front. So then ultimately, what is this game all about? Well, it's a grand strategy game, right? And the point of this grand strategy game is to take over the world. Or, well, the known world. And I don't know. It's not hard. It's not hard to take over the known world against AI. So I guess that's where I am. I don't really want to play anymore. I don't see any difficulty in pushing these AI across the map. If I play long enough, I have no doubt I'll own the map. I see no I see no capacity for the AI to change my mind in that belief. I will eventually steamroll this map. Of course, I did set it on easy campaign difficulty and medium battle difficulty. So, maybe if I was playing at harder difficulty, I might have a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? More annoyances. And I think that's exactly what would happen is I would become more annoyed having to deal with maybe some attacks from the enemy. But their attacks, as we saw, or well, we didn't actually see, we saw Cologne planning to attack Dortmund with a small little force that walked over here. And we simply went into Dortmund and hired units and put them on the walls. And then they decided, well, no, we're not going to go to Dortmund. We're going to go to Bremen instead. And then they lost the fight. I can imagine that at higher difficulties, that attack would come to Dortmund and actually hit me instead of going over there. But at the same time, then you're in the battle. You're in the battle screen, right? You're fighting. You're fighting the fight where, you put enough archers on the walls, you'll probably win. Well, at least at this point in time, until some actual siege engines start showing up on the battlefield. And I've seen, if you play the tutorial, you get a first-hand account of siege towers and catapults and trebuchets and all of that. And but I haven't quite seen as much of that yet. And I'm sure eventually I will see that, right? Probably once I start taking over Italy and start reaching into parts of France here. Technology-wise, will get people more in lines of having to do sieges and siege technology appearing. But I don't think that's really going to change the whole difficulty of the battles. In fact, I think it'll only exacerbate the strength that the player has over the AI in regards to ranged warfare. The player seems, or the AI seems very willing to throw their bodies into the meat grinder of the player and let the player utilize ranged warfare to the extreme to, kind of mindlessly win the battle. Which, again, isn't that big of a deal from the standpoint of I like that from the battle standpoint. I guess I'm kind of arguing against myself here at this point. I've come around in a full circle. And if you're understanding what I'm saying, I want more out of the grand strategy. I don't want the game to just be about me taking over the world. That's old. And frankly, it's boring. I would like the game to be, I don't know, more realistic. If I expanded Bohemia's borders to Cologne and Deventer and maybe annexed Frankfurt and say this area here of Austria and this area here of Austria, and I never got any bigger, I think that would be a huge victory for Bohemia, especially having started out as such a tiny lord. And I think that should be far harder to do than what it has been so far. And at the same time, there needs to be some way to weigh your success. Some sort of victory stat. So if you played Crusader Kings, well, I don't really play Crusader Kings to get big high scores, but you do get big high scores. Crusader Kings has a lot of stuff, a lot of fluff, roleplay, events, things that happen. That's what this game needs. It needs fluff. It needs things that happen that change the dynamic of the game. There just isn't any of that. All it is right now is just go take the next castle and the next town and the next castle and the next town until you eventually own the world. And that's that. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what this game is. I think in a multiplayer environment, this game would be far better. In fact, I think this game would be pretty freaking awesome in multiplayer. But from a single-player grand strategy perspective, I don't give this game that high of marks. But then again, take that with a grain of salt, as I don't give Total War that high of marks anymore. I used to like Rome 1. And I don't know. It's Rome or the Total War franchise on a whole has lost its appeal to me over the years. I don't know if it's because my tastes are changing as I'm getting older, or what, but it just seems like Total War, it gives me the same type of experience as I'm having in this game. A very, I'm just conquering the world type feel. What's the point? Why should I waste all this time putting so much time and effort into conquering the world? There's not much else happening. At least in Rome Total War, you had some sort of character building and retinue and marriages and politics and things of that nature. This game doesn't have any of that. And you had the speeches, and the speeches were cool and things of that nature, but that only went so far. That only kept your attention so long. So yeah, I like grand strategy games, but the grand strategy genre is losing its luster for me, and I don't know if it's because Paradox is just so much better than everybody else, and they're spoiling the heck out of me with giving me stuff that's, you know, when you play Europa Universalis and you play Crusader Kings 2, and then you play something like this, it's hard to feel that this isn't grand strategy light. And I mean really light. So for the $19 I spent on this game, I don't feel like I was cheated. I feel like this game is actually pretty fun. And if I ever got some of my friends together to play a multiplayer experience of this, I think I could enjoy it a lot. Problem is, I don't think my friends could sit down to truly play this multiplayer for the extent of time it would need to be played for it to really shine. I haven't made it that far here in the Kingdom of Bohemia, and I've already put, about 8 hours into the game. And yeah, I'm only on 4 hamlets in, about to take my 5th. And that's not very far. And so before you started having player-on-player clashes, I'm sure there's lots of NPCs to eat up, and before you start stabbing each other in the back and or allying against each other with your other friend, that could be a long sit-down. I mean, that would be several sit-downs. That we're talking about a multiplayer game that's, you know, it's now turning into a Paradox multiplayer game. You know, weeks or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks before a multiplayer a game of this would actually conclude, I think. And I'm not too I'm not too keen to jump into that type of multiplayer game here with a bunch of pugs. If you're not aware of what a pug is, it's basically a random person online. So you've never met them before. Yeah, I wouldn't want to jump into just a random multiplayer game of this. It would be too time consuming. And then there's the whole well, how honorable are they going to play? If I'm with my friends, I know that there's at least some amount of honor. Nobody's going to just be out to quickly ruin somebody else's day. Just because one guy starts at Metz and the other guy starts at Dijon. If you're playing with your friends, obviously, Metz will probably go eat up these guys and work this way, as the player in Dijon will work this way and start to eat around here, and there might be some border clashes here and there as they try to, work out their border, but no attempt to just basically take each other out of the game from day one, doing some sort of Zerg rush like World of Warcraft or like Warcraft. Sure, friends might do a Warcraft Zerg rush, because Warcraft games only take 2 or 3 hours, right? You're that's a little bit different in the story. You're not ruining his gameplay for 2 weeks while the guy sits around waiting for the rest of his friends to finish the game. So, in a game like this, a friendly game, people are gonna wait to turn on each other till the game's quite far along, and then you'll start to have the huge player clashes, and then people will start to get killed and ostracized, and then tempers will flare. And that's more the game I would like to be a part of multiplayer-wise, but yeah, with random people on the internet, I don't know. It would definitely have to be friends. And my friends, they don't have the attention span to play a game like this. So, yeah. From a single-player perspective, I don't think there's enough here. From a multiplayer perspective, I think this could probably be a really good game, but it's a game that would require time. More time than is probably feasible for a lot of people's friends, because, well, some people have less of an attention span. Other than that, I don't know what else to say about the game. I think I've hammered home most of the points of it. Again, great community here willing to help people learn the game. I can't give enough heads up and say enough good things about the people in here, like Lady T. She's amazing. Game for $19.99. It's not a bad buy. I mean, I think there's some people that might thoroughly enjoy this game. And hopefully what you've watched in my videos will let you know if this is a game you would thoroughly enjoy. But ultimately, it's not quite enough for me. I need a little bit more, and I think it's because I've become spoiled by Paradox, and I'm used to a bit more in my grand strategy. So I don't feel cheated, and I don't feel bad. I'm just doing this video and letting everyone else know how I feel, so that they can make a good assessment for themselves. Maybe they're watching my video to figure out if they want to purchase this game or what. And so I want to give them straight dope. But yeah, I think I've pretty much covered as much as can be covered between my first video, my second video, and this video, and the review and my outlook and thoughts on the game. So yeah, I recommend this game to people who are fans of this genre. Don't recommend. I recommend this game for guys who have a good multiplayer-oriented group that have good attention spans. And I don't recommend this game for people who are really hardcore in this genre, who are used to maybe paradox quality grand strategy games and demand more for their diplomacy and features. This game is a grand strategy light game as far as I'm concerned. Overall, I've recommended this game to quite a few people from what I just said, and ultimately, if I didn't talk about your group in specific, I'll leave it up to you to figure out if it's a game you enjoy or not. But anyway, hope everyone's having a good day. I appreciate doing these videos for you all, and as always, leave a like, subscribe, all of that jazz, and peace. The heck? And this game doesn't work well with OBS, by the way. God, just trying to end the video. Alright, here we go. And peace, guys. Have a great day.